tarde a todos. Muito obrigada pela presença. O Piano e Suas Perspectivas é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, Reitoria Digital da Universidade Federal de Goiás, Mississippi State University e Universidade del Atlántico, com apoio da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia de Portugal, Centro de Estudos de Sociologia e Estética Musical da Universidade Nova de Lisboa, Centro de Estudos Brasileiros, Rádio Universitária e Rádio Brasil Central FM. Fazem parte da equipe do programa, além de mim, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Yasbeck Seba, Yamira Rodrigues e Wesley de Menezes. The Piano and its Perspectives is a program of the School of Music and Performing Arts, Digital Department of the Federal University of Goiás, Universidade del Atlántico, and the Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal, Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the New University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Radio Universitária, and Radio Brasil Central FM. Besides me, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Yasbeck Seba, Yamira Rodrigues, and Wesley de Menezes. Thank you very much to be with us.
Good afternoon to Brazil, good evening to Europe, and good afternoon to United States. We have here Louis Nagel and Julie Nagel, a friend of mine, and they are wonderful people and musicians. We are here to talk about music and to talk about the relationship between psychology and music as well. We have a lot of students in music therapy in Brazil. They are interested in learning more about Julie's experience, Dr. Nagel's experience with stage fright in music and psychology. And Dr. Nagel, pianist, emeritus professor from University of Michigan. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
It's good to see you again, Louis.
Angela, it's been a long time, and it was 10 minutes longer.
I know. And thank you so much for everybody that has been listening and waiting for us. We have had some technical problems, but we have solved. In fact, Julie solved that. So I'm very thankful for that. We are going to start with a very informal question. And one of the questions that I always start my interviews is for both of you. How was your first and how it happened, the first experience with music for both of you?
Okay, I'll go first. Louis is looking at me. And I'm still working with the camera, but I want to say thank you to everyone who has made this happen, to so many people across the world, really, and which speaks to the power of music. And it speaks to the power of why I am involved in music. I didn't know that in the beginning, but I know that the more I am involved, the more important music is to human existence, social existence, and world peace. But I started when I was 4 years old, and I didn't know I was starting then. But my parents gave me a little white toy piano, had 24 keys on it, and I don't know how, but I knew how to play melodies on it. And I loved the sound, and I loved being the one who made the sound. And something just clicked with me. I can't explain it. But I do think that happens with a lot of people, because musicians start very young, and you don't know that you will grow into an adult and make this your career. But you do start young. We can talk about that later if you'd like.
Yeah.
And then I started formal lessons when I was 6 years old. And a lot of things that changed in my life by then. And my mother bought a full-size piano for me. It was an upright, not a grand. And I started taking piano lessons with a nice teacher, neighborhood teacher. I think I used to go because she had a dog who always came into the lessons. And I remember the dog would drink coffee on the floor by the pedals as I was having my lessons. And I loved this lady. But my mother realized when I was around 11 that I did not seem to be making too much progress. And she found a better teacher for me. About by then I was really into loving music, loving to play, had started to play a few little concerts in my hometown in Virginia. And the teacher that I started with at 11 really helped me develop musically and technically, and I just got involved in everything musical I could in my high school and developed, and I think this story is familiar to so many musicians as you get into your teen years and late adolescence. You decide, I want to make music my life's work. So I had big dreams. I fell in love with Leonard Bernstein and the young people's me and probably millions of other young people. And I wanted to go and major in music, and I applied to Juilliard, a couple of other schools, music schools. I did not consider anything else. It was the only thing I wanted to do, and I was fortunate enough to get admitted to Juilliard when I was 17. And that was only the beginning of a lifelong journey that I'm still on. Little did I ever know I would become a psychologist at that time. But I think I'll stop there. That was my first love affair with music, which has never ended. I'm just using it differently now than I thought I would. So, Louis, your turn.
Well,
Can you just?
we have similar stories. I too started around 4, and whatever I tell you is hearsay. I was there, but I sure don't remember. I have an image of that piano. We had an upright, something pretty shabby, but we had an upright piano, and I could just barely see over the keyboard. But I would go to the piano, and like Julie, I would pick out notes. I heard the relationship between notes, and I could make melodies. Now, the real issue here, my mother, who had absolutely no connection with music at all, had perfect pitch.
Mm.
And she heard that what I was doing made sense, and where she got music paper, I mean, she didn't enter into marriage some 15 years earlier with music paper in her, she didn't own it. I don't know where it came from, but she had music paper. Maybe she went out and bought it when she heard that I could do this, and she wrote these melodies down. They decided that I should go into a pre-school music class at the University of Louisville, where I'm from. So they put me in a children's class. I was about 4, maybe pushing towards 5. And as I was told, I have no memory of this, but I'm told that I was thoroughly disruptive because I knew everything. I mean, I also had perfect pitch, and I knew what a C was, and I knew that I could tell major and minor. I don't know where I learned it, but I knew everything. I was bored and I was disruptive. So at the very early age of 4.5 or 5, I was kicked out of class. They put me in private lessons with a man who should have been sainted. His name was Grant Graves. He was a wonderful, wonderful teacher in the preparatory department at the University of Louisville. He knew how to handle me, at least so that I maintained interest. And he brought me along with wonderful pedagogy. And I stayed with him possibly too long, just from the standpoint of it got comfortable. I think I was with him for 9 or 10 years, but he led me through my very, very first public appearances, through my first experience with orchestra, through my very first piano recital. I was 9 with orchestra and 10 with recital. And he took me up to the point where I was starting to learn really concert repertoire, and I went to another teacher, Dwight Anderson, who was I've had wonderful teaching. I've had some of the best teaching you can imagine, including teachers at Juilliard and post-doctoral work with Vladimir Ashkenazy. But Dwight Anderson was the greatest teacher I ever had.
Mm.
And he led me with a firm twinkle in his eye, but a firm hand throughout pretty much the rest of my high school. After that was Juilliard, and we can talk about that later.
Yeah, and the two of you met at Juilliard, right? Am I correct with that?
Her first day. Her first day.
He
Okay.
remembers, huh?
There you go.
Well, I remember fondly. She may have.
No, Louis was a second year student, and I was a first year. So he had been there for a year,
And I knew everything.
and he still knew everything.
I think he
Well,
was
at
trying
least
to
I
impress
thought he
you,
did at the
Julie.
time. I thought he did.
Well,
Yeah, no, I met him at when I was registering, and it was so confusing, to be in this environment and actually living my dream, and had to sign up for classes. I had no idea. And here he was. I think I bumped into him at the drugstore, right?
It was Birdie's Pharmacy.
Yeah, the
across
Birdie's
the
Pharmacy
street.
across the street.
It's a historic building now.
And it's torn down now.
Yeah,
yeah, it is
We've
torn down.
outlived
There's no
it.
nothing there.
And I'll tell you, he was eating a strawberry sundae, and I had a tuna salad sandwich, and that's the story of our life. But I was asking him about what classes to take, what teachers to take, and I was so impressed.
And did you guys stay in the same studio? Who were you studying with, Louis, at the time?
Not at first.
Well, part of my transition from high school to college was Mr. Anderson went on sabbatic, and I worked with Benjamin Owen, who was a Juilliard graduate. He was a superb pianist, and he prepared me. He also had studied with Joseph and Rosina Levine.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Levine was playing occasionally solo. You know the story. She didn't play solo while Joseph was alive, but towards the end of her life, she started a solo career with orchestra. So she had just played with the Indianapolis Symphony, and Mr. Owen invited her to come to Louisville and hear me. And I played the first movement of the Beethoven Third Piano Concerto, both parts. I knew the orchestra.
The C minor. The C minor.
Yeah, but I played the tutti also because that's the way I was taught. And she was impressed, and she accepted me before I even auditioned. I didn't know anything about this. All I did, I was sort of the white whale in Moby Dick. I just did what I do. But
And what you were told to do, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't think anything. It was nice to play the Beethoven Third. I still adore the piece. I mean, I've played it several times, but I didn't know what this was leading to. I didn't know who Rosina Levine was any more than what. So I entered Juilliard in her studio, but I didn't really study with her. She had so many students. She had an assistant. I studied with the assistant. It did not work out. So
you were facing a legend. I mean, you were in front of a legend.
I knew that, and I had heard. Of course, we knew her playing. She was playing a little bit by then, and I've always said I have never heard scales. I've never heard music played as beautiful as she played scales. But it didn't. I was scared, plain scared. So after 2 years of kind of foundering, it was a mutual agreement, and I think it's very rare that students change studios at Juilliard without animosity. But I went, and I knew two people in this other studio. I knew this honey blonde who's sitting next to me now, and I knew another guy, and they loved Joseph Rafe.
Yeah.
And they recommended, Mrs. Levine recommended I work with Mr. Rafe, that I would get more attention and I could develop, and she was right. And I went in and I played for Mr. Rafe, and I remember he said, "Louis, you're talented. I'd like to help you. Let's go to work." And I'm telling you, the sun came out that day, and he was wonderful. And I'm gonna add a codicil to this story. Every year, Juilliard, every school does, had concerto competitions, and I won one year with the Brahms D minor. And it was unusual that other than a student of Mrs. Levine's, they usually won. But there would always be somebody else. And I won from Mr. Rafe's studio, and it was very exciting. And I had, look, the Brahms D minor with the Juilliard Orchestra, it's still to this day, I can relive this. And after the concert, we were backstage, and Mr. Rafe comes backstage, and who is with him but Rosina Levine, who says, "Congratulations, you played very beautifully."
Oh, that is a compliment, yeah.
She's a real mensch when she does that, and I have only the respect. I know how great she was, and I was in that milieu because Mr. Rafe had studied with Joseph Levine and had collaborated in four-hand music with Mrs. Levine. They were friends, and they both had the most beautiful sounds that I've ever heard out of the piano. So the temperament was right. Mr. Rafe just was the right person for me. And I can thank Julie a lot for that, because she spoke so highly of him, and helped me feel comfortable being in that studio.
That's wonderful. So, and this is something that I mean, I can interview you guys for the entire day, but we only have half an hour left. But one of the things that I received many emails today, and they were because both of you had the top education that any musician can have. And then all of a sudden, Julie, not all of a sudden, but Julie changed her career to be psychologist. And now I know that you guys work together. You give concerts and lectures together. And I one time played for Louis, and I was so scared to death. And we were hosting him here for the Mississippi Piano Showcase. And he's just kind of look at me and say, well, why don't you're driving me around, and why don't you just play for me? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't touched piano like more than a week, and because I was so busy doing other things that we do. And that's the idea of this interview, is the piano and its perspectives. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we are in the piano world, but we do so many other things with that career. So Julie, how did you go from concert pianist to psychologist?
Yeah. You said you only have a half hour.
Or maybe 15 minutes.
It's taken me a lifetime.
Spend the time with her.
No, let me just say, I never, ever, ever, ever dreamed that this is what I would be doing in blending music and psychology. It's deeply personal, but it's also an educational journey that I went back to graduate training and then subsequently psychoanalytic training with 16 more years of education and clinical training past my Juilliard Masters. I don't regret a minute of it, but to get to the kind of people are not simple, and my story is not simple, but I was always interested in stage fright because of my own. And I had my first memory slip. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I was ashamed and I felt awful. And I was 6 years old when I started my first teacher. She was recording some music I had written. And I forgot my own music that I'd written. And I did not want it to be, I wanted it, that tape recorder stopped. And I tried to whisper it so she would hear me and stop it. And she didn't, and she kept it going. And I remember, I didn't even know what to call it, but I remember I can call it now: shame, humiliation, anxiety, that other people would hear it. They would make fun of me. They would not think I was a good pianist. I don't know, in retrospect, I'm saying some of this. But because of that early experience, and because I had to struggle with stage fright, I always say, I may have talent, but I'm not the natural Louis is. And I used to think, and I hope people can de-idealize some of these glorious talents they hear, not because they're not, but because you don't have to be intimidated by that. You have to be who you are. And to be who you are, you have to come to know who you are. And that was very important for me, to understand my own stage fright, but in the process to help other people. And in the process of going back to school at the University of Michigan, and going into a graduate degree in psychology and social work, and then going into psychoanalytic training. If I have to boil this down, and it's really unfair to do that because it's been a really arduous and exciting journey that you are on from birth to death, really. You never stop. And my vision of what to do with music now is changing as history is changing under our feet and in our world right now, because careers are not the kind of careers I envisioned when I went to Juilliard. They haven't been, but now it's clear that the musician has to be an ambassador, a citizen, somebody involved in the social fabric of society and spread beauty and good. And I don't mean to get into all of that now, but anyway, as I went into stage, as I was interested in my own stage fright, I went back to school, it just deepened and deepened and deepened into not only stage fright, but who is this person who has stage fright? I don't really think stage fright is about playing the piano or whatever instrument. I think it's about the person who plays and who has something from inside to express through music, not through words unless you sing, but through the music. And that music reaches our emotions so deeply. And we're so connected with it as we have spoken. But I would love to talk to the people who are here, you know, and know when they started and how they've developed, because it is so attached to who you are as a person. In technical terms, your ego, your concern about what other people think, what you think about yourself. Are you good enough? Comparing, you know, playing for Louis. He's a human being. But we, you know, everybody who plays, Ashkenazi, all the great stars that we've had the good fortune of meeting a number of them. But they're human beings and they go home and they have to pay bills and their furnaces break down and they have to practice and they have self-doubts too. And it's coming in terms with what is the good in me and how can I share that through music. This appealed to me so much that it led me into writing about not only stage fright, but about my book is called Melodies of the Mind, my first book, about the power of music to move us, you know.
Let me ask Andrea to put I sent the links to Andrea, and I will ask her to put the links, which is Melodies of the Mind. And if you scroll down, Andrea, it's the other one is about the other book, The Managing Stage Fright. And is this, can you explain a little bit more about those, or one book or those, or both books? And can you, how did it come to fruition?
Oh my goodness. Well, stage fright is the story of my life. And if you read between the lines, you read about how it came to fruition. That I was fortunate to be able to go back to school and to be able to have people like at Juilliard that supported creative thinking, interdisciplinary thinking, how to take what I think is so important, music, outside of the teaching studio and into the community and share it with other people, talk with them, listen to them. And I'm really trying to be concise because of the time limit, but this could go on. I mean, my book that I'm writing now is called Career Choice in Music, and that I think brings both of these books together. So stage fright is something I had since 6 years old, and I wanted to share both psychologically and musically, because music training is not only about music, it's about thinking, it's about analyzing, it's about hearing the melodies and what's beneath the melodies. And when I work as a psychologist, I work with not only what do I hear people say, but what goes into the person who is having those kinds of thoughts and feelings, and what is upsetting the person that prevents them from doing something that they love and that they want to do. And this is not just musicians that I work with. So that the skills I learned as a musician have been extraordinarily helpful in this career change. And it's not a change, it's blending. You never lose what you've already done. You can blend it, you can leave it, but it's a part of you forever. The mind never forgets. Melodies of the Mind. I started writing papers. I was interested, is there something about the formal qualities of music that is compatible with how the mind, not the brain, not the anatomy, not what you see under X-ray, but what you feel, what you think. X-rays can't picture what you feel. And is there something about music that is compatible with what we feel emotionally? And yes, I think there is. And that started the Melodies of the Mind, each chapter, because each chapter is based on a different piece of music that I analyze musically, and I also analyze from a psychological point of view, and show you how, at least I think, it's not just music is pretty, music is fast, music is slow, but what is inherent in music? What are the themes? What are for example, the tritone in West Side Story? if people can envision that interval. That's an interval that connotes instability. It's not just instability in the music and the tritone and the longing for resolution, but the longing for resolution between the Jets and the Sharks. And not just between the Jets and the Sharks, but within each one of those people. And when they talk to Officer Krupke and tell him how he doesn't understand, he doesn't. Society doesn't. His parents didn't. And Bernstein, the genius, uses this tritone in every verse of G. Officer Krupke. That's one of the chapters. I look at shame in the opera Lucia di Lammermoor when she murdered her husband on their wedding night. And the shame that she felt as a woman in being forced to marry someone she didn't love. And she was so humiliated, and how she was lied to, and how Donizetti brought that out in the music. So I became interested in the relevance of music and how the mind works. And then this career choice book that I'm writing is on the whole spectrum of what I call really birth through the whole life. Until the day you die, you're a musician.
That's
you're making music. And if you don't just arrive at something and you win a competition and then no, you have to keep moving. And now with the pandemic and the instability that is so brutal that we're witnessing in Ukraine, I haven't figured out how to reach the Ukrainian people, but I've been trying to think about how to reach people to understand the enemy that's inside all of us, but some people can't contain it, and it comes out in war, and that's putting it mildly. But yeah, so it's a long answer, and I don't know if I've stayed even on topic, but once a musician, always a musician. And if something else interests you, I really think now that hopefully we'll be able to get out more in public, but Zoom has been a lifesaver. Learn the technology, learn the things you have to do to reach out to people and have them feel. If you follow a lot of YouTubes and things that are coming across the line now, you'll see the Ukrainian national anthem over and over in different ways. People, including the opera chorus in Odessa, the people who are not on the front line, now. I don't want to get political with this, but you do get political. You get social. You can use it in education. You can use it in music and child development. I wrote a chapter in Melodies of the Mind on Peter and the Wolf, Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf, where I look at Peter's theme starting as a simple melody. And I believe, if I'm remembering, it's a string quartet. It's very simple. He's skipping in the yard of grandfather. By the end, he has grown up. He's left grandfather's gate, and his theme has gone through all kinds of instruments, the bird, the duck, which I say are Peter. They're parts of Peter. The bird and duck are part of Peter. And by the time it's over, he's captured the wolf. He didn't kill him. He captured the wolf, carrying him to the zoo. Peter's become a grown-up boy, and the music, the Peter's theme, is become a full orchestral march, a version on taking the wolf to the zoo. To me, this is so exciting. And so once I started writing these blended papers, and knowing that I could use them to teach with, to show about child development, to show about shame. I could talk about stage fright from Lucia di Lammermoor, if or injustice and oppression through West Side Story. Because West Side Story starts on a tritone. It tries to resolve. Some of the pieces don't have it, but the pieces between the Jets and the Sharks tend to have it, and the whole story, the whole play, musical, ends on a tritone.
Tritone, yeah.
When turned my ringer off when I was getting on. That's life too, but you kind of fold that in and keep going. I guess you do. You just fold your life in and keep going and find what interests you and share it with others. And we're here for each other.
Yeah.
It's like the pandemic. We want to keep ourselves safe, so we don't give it to somebody else, as well as keep healthy ourselves.
Let me
fascinating, and I'm pleased. I'm just.
Let me ask you this: have you? Because
long, I know.
No, not at all. I just want you to tie your conversation, because I'm learning too. I am
cannot
also
hear you. Wait a minute.
Okay.
I think that phone call interrupted something.
All right.
Uh,
I can hear you. I can hear you. I really can hear you.
I can't hear you.
You cannot hear me. You might need to go to settings again. And unfortunately, when we are using the phone, can you hear me now, Julie? No, cannot hear. All right. Would it be okay if you turn off and then
Something with the phone.
off?
I'm afraid I've cut
Off?
you off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
off and then come back.
Don't know how to get back on.
Yeah, unfortunately, we lost both of them.
This is called stage fright, but we're going to solve it. And I don't know what to do though.
Turn off. You will have to
hit
turn off.
everything.
There you go. Well, my experience with Dr. Nagel, Louis Nagel, was that he would come here and teach for our pre-college. And he was also doing a lot of teaching during the day and then performing at night for 2 weeks. In fact, for a whole week, but he would come a little early and stay a little longer. But what I noticed about him, and when he had to perform, he was never backstage. He was always in the front, in the lobby, talking to people, sitting in the audience, and then we would announce him, and then he would come on stage and then perform. Those are things that I admired in him, and I asked him many times. I said, Dr. Nagel, why are you not backstage? Do you need anything? He said, no. I am going to perform as if I am here with friends, and this is not a concert performance. And he treats his concerts like that. And I think it's something that he has been working with his wife. And I learned that it is not about us. The performance is not about us. It is not about our ego. It is about the music itself and the connection with people. And once you do that, you pretty much disconnect yourself with the pressure of performance.
Rose, maybe you can call them and while
I'm
you're
hoping,
here,
yeah, let's see if I
because they
can call
can
them or text them.
I will be here, okay, while you talk with them.
Sounds good. Okay, take care.
Thank you very much. We had a little problem, technical problem, and I hope we will come back soon. Obrigada. They come back.
There we go. Here we are again.
I am so sorry.
It's all right. Whenever somebody calls you and you're using your phone, or you are disconnected, or the sound will mute because it goes to the call and not to the broadcast. So it doesn't have the capability of doing two things.
No.
But Julie, I was talking while you guys were off. I was trying to, as we say in Brazil, I was trying to improvise here a little bit. But I was talking about Dr. Nagel, Louis Nagel, when the first time I ever seen somebody, concert pianist, that was not backstage. He was, in fact, in front in the lobby, talking to people, and he was just chatting. And then he sat in the front and in the audience until I announced him, and then he went to the stage and performed. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so
You need to look
refreshing. So, and then he said to me, it's not about me, Rose. It is really not about me. It's about the music and the connection with people. And I thought, whoa, okay. Now I will ask you, Louis, to talk about that.
Well, you know my joke, and it's mostly a joke, but it's partly serious, particularly if you play with orchestra, but always. You're in the green room. That's what they call it, the green room. That's because you're nervous and you feel a little bit nauseous from your nerves and you're turning green.
Yeah. You're turning green.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know whether that resonates with people who don't speak English. That's a cliche. When you don't feel well, you're turning green.
Yeah.
But the real issue, and I do this, I also tell people I'm calling roll. I'm doing none of those things. It's about communicating with people, and I love people. I love to be there with them and chat with them. One of the amusing instances that I had. I was playing a concert in Mount Pleasant, I think it is, at the Central Michigan, here in the state. And it was in a church, a small church, and I was sitting in the audience next to somebody, and the person next to me looked and said, I'm looking forward to it. It's a nice program. I hope the pianist is good. And he went on, and I had no idea. And then it was time for me to start. So I got up and went to the piano, and the guy, I think he turned green. Well, I didn't mean to make him feel bad. I like to be with people. And then when it's time to play the Bach Partita or the Bartok dances or whatever you're going to play, it's the music. The focus is on the music. The emotion is in the music. It's in you, and the communicated through the music. And when I'm having a good day, there is no audience, there's no piano, there's no environment, there's just sound. Me and the sound, and I'm wrapped up in the sound. This doesn't happen all the time, but when it happens, it's a mystical, wonderful experience. I don't like to be isolated beforehand. I'm there with people, for people to enjoy the music.
Can I show the partita, since you're talking about Bach partita? I know you are fond of Bach. So this is Bach partita, and if we can start. I took this from your website.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Be careful. There.
Oh, the French suite.
Yeah. Excuse me, French suite, yes. We will have to stop a little bit here. The G major is one of my favorites.
That was a high school piece, by the way, for me that I did in my senior year, and I played for Mrs. Levine when she came to Louisville. I mean, I've lived with that a long time, but Mr. Graves actually got me started on that piece when I was younger, and I've loved it all my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
The G is hard.
Yes, it is. Well, Bach is hard. Bach is hard, period. But I tell my students, he's the man. He if he comes to earth again, we all will have to bow and kiss his hands and feet, because
if it's any consolation, on Sunday here in town, I'm playing a Bach birthday concert with
what are you playing?
G major toccata, 3 preludes and fugues, and the E minor partita.
Oh my gosh!
And the E minor is, I don't know, it's such a monumental emotional experience to play that.
Well, I just think there's no other composer like Bach. Nobody has ever touched his capability and expertise and counterpoint. It's just unbelievable. But I just think that sometimes having both of you as musicians and Julie as psychologist, late in my life, I'm becoming more and more opposite of what I was. I become a little bit more analytical, and I am less emotional. but at the same time, I care less of what people think. And I think it comes with the age too, that you don't have to prove yourself. And do you all, both of you, and this is a question for both of you, what would be the advice that you would give to a young musician?
Can I just
Both of you looking at each other.
Well, I think the advice that Julie is going to give, if I know Julie, is going to be far more profound. But from the standpoint of the study of music, I would advise a student to listen to all kinds of music and without deciding good, bad, or indifferent, listen to everything. My teacher wanted me to listen to lead, to song, and I didn't do it. And I'm so sorry I didn't. I'm really sorry. It's really, for me now, the heart of making music. But listen to Bach, and listen to Pierre Boulet's First Piano Sonata, and listen to the Bartók Mikrokosmos, and listen to all the Beethoven sonatas. Don't say, it's too hard, I can't play it, or I don't like it, and leave that out. Hear how many endless different ways there are of making great music. Listen to popular music, listen to show tunes, listen to good, really, jazz is there's nothing except good that comes from listening to jazz. Hearing music, and I don't mean just hearing it while you're doing your homework, listen to it. And try to learn as wide a variety of composers in your formative years as you can. Whether you're going to be a concert pianist, a psychologist, or a politician, God forbid, you have to have.
I think you should be a politician, isn't it?
You have to have a wide, inclusive listening experience. That would be a piece of advice that I would give.
Well, I think about that question a lot. Rosangela, you are a wonderful interviewer because your questions are probing, and there are no simple answers, and you're not afraid to ask them. So it's a pleasure to be challenged this way. And I think about this question, especially now. And I have two pieces of advice that were given to me. And I don't know if I would, as a therapist, if I would actually give advice, because I would work with somebody who came to me wanting to talk about what am I going to do, my thoughts, my interests. I do this a lot. I work with people. Try and help them find out where they're at now and why are they thinking about change now, and what excites them. Before I share these two pieces of advice, I also want to put something very practical into this that I think I never thought about, and I think about a lot now, and I write about it in this book I'm writing. I've written about it before. Actually, I wrote about it in one of my doctoral prelims about the economics and earning a living in a field that is, if you look at the United States Census, and that's the data I've used, the National Endowment for the Arts, musicians do not earn on par, anywhere near par, with other professionals who don't start as children. They can make a career decision in college. We couldn't. I couldn't start becoming a musician when I went to college at 17. But the income differential is profound, and how to promote the value of the arts and not to underestimate, I do it because I love it, and it doesn't matter, if they can't afford me. I just want to play because I love it. I think we have to work with people to feel their self-worth in terms of asking for payment, a negotiating payment, or doing it for free and then having 2, 3, 4 other jobs to support themselves. But that is a whole nother thing to talk about. But I think it goes along with self-esteem and realizing that there's nobody worth any more than a musician. That you can do things doctors can't do, that we value so much. I had my high school teacher when I went off to Juilliard, and he was very influential in my life. I was the accompanist for the choir all through high school, and I was very close with this teacher. And he told me to keep my options open. And at the time, as a 17-year-old person, I thought he was saying to me, I don't think you're going to be able to make it in music. Better keep your options open. Thank God I had something in my brain that let me, and in my life story that forced me, actually, personally, to keep my options open. Because I never would have done, I graduated from Juilliard realizing I'm not going to have a concert career. I'm not going to wear these gowns. I'm not going to perform with Leonard Bernstein. Although we did once as a choir at Juilliard.
Oh my
And that was thrilling. Yeah, that's another story. But years later, I had his daughter, one of his daughters, be my guest at a program I chaired in a psychological program where we talked about West Side Story. And she talked about it from her father's perspective. You never know where life's going to lead you. Be willing to be led as well as to try and just have everything predetermined. That was one thing. And then in my doctoral, one of my doctoral prelims where you have to sit before your committee and talk about your research. And, I thought I was talking about something that everybody would be interested in. I mean, how could anybody not be interested in careers in the arts and all the things I was talking about? And my advisor, who was just hugely important in my life, became a personal friend. I'd given this whole long thing. And he looked at me and he said, why would anybody care about what you're talking about? And I was absolutely deflated. Again, I had to put that in a perspective of, this is all important. You've got to help people understand why the arts are important. And I would give that advice to young and middle-aged and older musicians now. Why should anybody care? Because the arts are a part of being human, a part of being a part of society. I don't see why an artist can't be a politician. Do you know that Giuseppe Verdi was made senator for life in Italy?
And Paderewski.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was. And he advocated for arts and arts education for women, which was not endorsed at the time.
Villa-Lobos was
important.
Villa-Lobos was the Minister of Education and Culture in Brazil for a long, long time.
Who is that?
Villa-Lobos.
Villa-Lobos, yeah. So don't rule out politics. We need artistic ambassadors. And I think if we can expand ourselves to think about who we are as artists, not just somebody trying to get all the right notes and have, some whatever we think it should be, to expand our role is to interact with society, to interact with educators, to interact with politicians, to interact in any way we can. I don't know how going forward. We have the internet now. We've all kind of been forced to learn something we may have avoided if we weren't forced to get into something like this. And to use the arts as an expression that can reach out to people and make them feel, and that you don't have to be a concert, this or that.
And that's the idea of this program. The idea is to bring the different perspective. We are talking about piano, but it could be music. I think I would love, and we will have to end, unfortunately, but I would love to have you guys back, okay? I would like to expand our conversation. I didn't even touch, and I'm sure I didn't even touch the surface of your knowledges. And I would like to make available for people that did not have the opportunity to hear today, but YouTube will be there. But I also would like to bring you guys back maybe in the future, near future. And if it's okay with y'all, we will try to set up another interview with independent Julie and Louis, different interviews, or together again. I think the two of you are a wonderful combination, and I would love to have you guys back. So thank you very much. I appreciate you guys being here with us. And I would say to the audience in Europe and an audience in the United States, as well as in Latin America, I always admire the Nagels. I've known Louis for quite a while now. I met Julie briefly some years ago, and but I know of you, and I know of what you do, and I really appreciate you guys accepting this invitation, and thank you very, very much for being here with us today.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank you.
us.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Stay with us. I will go, we are going to go backstage, but I just stay for 5 minutes. She's going to
Okay.
close
Okay.
the
Okay.
interview.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagel. It's a beautiful interview. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
Muito obrigada a todos vocês pela presença. Esse programa é um projeto da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas da Universidade Federal de Goiás, juntamente com a Reitoria Digital, Mississippi State University e Universidade del Atlántico, com apoio da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia de Portugal, Centro de Estudos de Sociologia e Estética Musical da Universidade Nova de Lisboa, Centro de Estudos Brasileiros, Rádio Universitária e Rádio Brasil Central FM. The Piano and its Perspectives is a program of the School of Music and Performing Arts, Digital Department of the Federal University of Goiás, Universidade del Atlántico, de Colombia, and the Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal, Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the New University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Radio Universitária and Radio Brasil Central FM. Besides me, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Yazbek Seba, Yamira Rodrigues, and Wesley de Menezes are part of the program's team. Our proposal is to bring to all those interested issues related to the importance of music and its role in society. Thank you very much.